Ooh, we don't want that. Good afternoon, everyone. Hold on, this is going to make noise here. There we go. Good afternoon. We're going to be covering some breaking news here in a second. I just want to give people a second to join the stream. Welcome to those who've already joined. This news just came out very recently today. I don't see it being reported that much, so we want to talk to you about it here. So, giving people a second to join the stream. As you probably now know, since you came here, the Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination today. So just this afternoon, just a little about an hour ago, we want to talk about this, let you know what we know, and give you a chance to respond to it. So welcome here. Okay, so let's start doing this. Hold on, I'm just pulling it up here. So today, welcome. This is Steve Lookner. This is Right Side Broadcasting. We are covering, doing some live coverage of this breaking news that came out this afternoon, which is Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination today. And I'm going to show you the tweet I have here where he withdrew. Hold on, I'm going to do this. There we go. He says, it's funny because if you look at the previous one from January 16th, it says, I am looking forward to my hearing, but there was no hearing. Why? Because it says, I am withdrawing my nomination for Secretary of Labor. I'm honored to have been considered and am grateful to all who have supported me. So, that's Andy Puzder he withdrew today as Secretary of Labor. And you might say, why did it happen? Why did the Secretary of Labor nominee withdraw? So, I think the key point here about him withdrawing, the key thing to keep in mind is that he wasn't going to get Democratic votes anyway. But the Senate, Republicans have a majority in the Senate. So basically, Republicans have 52 to 48 in the Senate right now. So as long as Andy Puzder had all of the Republicans in the Senate, he'd be fine. So to me, his withdrawing today means he got word, or somebody got word, that he was going to lose 3 or more Republicans. That's one possibility. I think so. One possibility for why Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination today is that it became clear he was going to lose at least 3 Republicans, and if he loses at least 3 Republicans, he can't get confirmed if all the Democrats vote against him, and all the Democratic senators, as far as I've heard, were going to vote against him. So that's possibility one. There's this question of why did he withdraw today? Also, I want to say here, we want to come on and give you some coverage of this because it's important. I am just stunned how little coverage this is getting in the mainstream media. So CNN, I had CNN on in the car this afternoon. I was driving. By the way, I apologize. We're not on our set. We're doing a little stuff in the office today, so I'm not on the set. I'm at home doing this. But I was driving here, and I had CNN on the radio, on satellite radio, and at the top of the hour, I figured, this will be the lead story. And at CNN, Wolf Blitzer comes on. It's like breaking news. I'm like, okay, so now they're going to report on the Labor Secretary withdrawing his nomination. And the breaking news, the big breaking news on CNN about a half an hour ago was Trump administration people, Trump campaign people have been had contact with Russian intelligence during the campaign. So it's not breaking news. It's the same story that's been out for a day, and there was nothing new on it. And they weren't even covering this, so nobody seemed to be covering the story. So this to me is an important story that Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination just about an hour ago. So we're trying to figure out why this happened. One possibility, as I just said, is that he thought, or the administration thought, at least 3 Republican senators were not going to vote for him. Because once 3 Republican senators don't vote for him, if the Democrats all don't vote for him, which was probably going to happen, he couldn't get confirmed. So that's possibility one. Let me raise a couple of other issues here that are possible. So there's some stuff that came out about Andy Puzder that people who are against him have been raising questions about. And perhaps he didn't want this stuff to come out in hearing. So one big thing that happened is sometime after he got nominated, it came out that he had, I believe it was a housekeeper, domestic worker, working for him for a number of years who was undocumented, and he wasn't, or was it undocumented? Let me get this straight. Was it undocumented or not the taxes? I believe he didn't pay taxes on her, but I also thought, yes. So he had an undocumented housekeeper, Andy Puzder, and I'm going to get you the exact dates of this. This came out after the nomination. It says, if I can get the dates for you, I'll get them. It says, well, I can't find the dates. So, but he had an undocumented housekeeper for several years, and it came out he didn't pay taxes on her because I guess you're supposed to pay taxes on this person. You're supposed. I mean, if you have an employee, you're supposed to be paying taxes on them. And he never paid taxes, and these taxes came out. He didn't pay the taxes till after the nomination, after he was nominated. So perhaps there's some issue here. I mean, here's a possible scenario. Possible scenario that happened. I don't know exactly what happened. Possible scenario that happens with Puzder is he gets nominated. They do a background check. They're doing this extensive background check on him. And during the background check, they find out this housekeeper isn't undocumented. And maybe he didn't know. Maybe he did know. Maybe he didn't know. But if he didn't know, I guess my point is like, if he did know, let's say if he did know, and then he wasn't paying, let me take this back. If he didn't know, regardless of whether he knew or not, if he wasn't paying taxes on her, that in itself is an issue. And if he only paid taxes on her after it came out, after he was nominated, then the issue is that it's not that she was undocumented, it was just that he had this person working for him for several years who he's not paying taxes on. And if the only reason he ended up doing that is because, somebody said to him after he got nominated, hey, you might want to pay taxes on this person, then perhaps if that came out in the hearing that was the case, then he would lose several Republican senators. I mean, because it might just seem, perhaps, so I guess my point here is that we don't know the whole story on this undocumented worker he had working for him. The taxes weren't being paid on this person. But perhaps there's something about that story that if it fully came out in his hearings, it would sink the nomination or embarrass him or both. So one possibility would just be like he just never paid taxes on her. He never declared her as an employee. And he was just doing that to save money or because he was lazy. And whether or not he knew she was undocumented, that would probably be a big deal in a hearing if that came out, because you'd be like, hey, you're supposed to be the labor secretary and you weren't even paying taxes on this employee. So that could be a big deal. Another possibility is that he knew she was undocumented but never said anything about it, and then only fired, I guess after he learned she was undocumented, he fired her and then said, I think he helped her get legal advice or something like that. But the point is, if it came out that he somehow knew she was undocumented, but didn't get rid of her until after he got nominated and after this vetting process happened, that would be an issue too. And that would be both embarrassing, and it also would cause him probably to lose some support among even Republican senators. So it's possible here. So there's a couple possibilities on the table, at least that I see, for why he withdrew his nomination. One possibility is he just heard from certain Republican senators, or he heard through the grapevine, that at least 3 Republican senators were just never going to vote for him, no matter what he said in hearings. And if that was the case, maybe he was just like, I don't want to bother going through this because I'm not going to get approved. Another possibility is that there's stuff that could have come out in the hearings concerning this undocumented worker who worked for him for a number of years, and he did not pay taxes on it. He didn't fire her or let her go until after he was nominated. Perhaps there's stuff that could have come out in the hearings about that and would have either sunk his nomination or been embarrassing to him, or both. So that's another possibility. Here's a whole other possibility. So I just became aware of this recently. Andy Puzder has an ex-wife who, when they got divorced, she went on Oprah incognito, either in disguise or not revealing her real identity. And she did an episode of Oprah where she talked about, I believe it was some sort of domestic abuse thing that was going on. Let me just look this up here. If I can find you the exact phrasing of it, I will. I think it was either in the New York Times article. Yes. So according to the New York Times article, his ex-wife appeared incognito on Oprah Winfrey's show and detailed her claims of abuse. Now, she later recanted these claims of abuse. Don't really know what's going on there. But the point is, suppose this abuse happened, or I'm just saying, throwing this out there, or suppose he thought that this was going to come up in his hearings and be really embarrassing to him. So for various reasons, Andy Puzder might have thought, oh no, now that this stuff with my wife is out in the public, it's going to come up in hearings, and A, it'll be really embarrassing, or B, like enough will come out about it that it will cause 3 Republican senators to vote against me. So that could have something to do with it too. So there's all these different possibilities as to why he withdrew. Was it that he knew already that certain Republicans weren't going to vote for him? Was it that there was stuff about his undocumented housekeeper that was going to come out in the hearings and him not paying taxes on her? Was there stuff about his ex-wife who at some point went incognito on Oprah and talked about his made claims that he abused her? Was that stuff going to come out in the hearings and in some sense be embarrassing to him or sink his nomination? And remember, she recanted those claims later, but I have no idea what's going on with that. Also, another thing is look, family stuff is family stuff. Maybe, he talked to his ex-wife and she said, look, don't go to this hearing because if they go to the hearing, they're going to play this stuff nationally, and I don't want the national news. I mean, this stuff is out there about his ex-wife appearing on Oprah, but it's not out there in the sense that I don't even know if it's public, this videotape from Oprah, and I certainly haven't seen clips of it on the news networks and not prominent if it's been on. But there's a world in which if the hearings happened and this footage was available, it would be shown constantly. And maybe his ex-wife was just like, I don't want this footage out there, or he didn't want that footage out there that publicly. So there's all these possibilities for why he could have withdrawn his nomination. Either he might not have thought he would have won, or maybe he thought he could have won, but it would have been personally embarrassing to him. I don't know. So these are some different thoughts I have. So another thing and I want to say, by the way, I want to see if you guys have any comments out there. I would love to hear any comments you have on this, or any thoughts you have about why he pulled his nomination this afternoon. If you want to write comments in, you can either go to Twitter. My Twitter is @Lookner, @LOOKNER, and you can direct message me there, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. So while we're doing this coverage of Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrawing his nomination today, I would love to hear anything you all think about this, or any questions or comments you might have. So reach me at those places. I'm just making sure no one is messaged in already. Okay, so another thing, though, that was bothering me today when I was reading the coverage about this Andy Puzder stuff is, I will say that so there were other criticisms that people had been giving to Andy Puzder's nomination, namely maybe Democrats, and some of these criticisms I thought were a little bothersome, or at least questionable. So the main criticisms on the Democratic side were that first of all, he was against the minimum wage. And second of all, he was against Obama's overtime law that ended up getting overturned by a federal judge. But Obama's overtime law, proposed law, was basically, it would have let 4 million more people be eligible for overtime pay because it raised the salary you could make while still be eligible for overtime pay. If you're above a certain salary, you're not eligible for overtime pay anymore. But his proposal raised that threshold. So anyways, a lot of Democrats were against Andy Puzder because they said he's against the minimum wage and he was against Obama's overtime expansion. And now it's but the thing is, the reasoning they gave, and I read some quotes from Democrats about this, was stuff like, well, that just shows he doesn't care about American workers. And how can you let somebody who's so against workers be the labor secretary? Now, again, I should mention Andy Puzder is a very big fast food executive. He's the chief executive of CKE Restaurants, who own Hardee's and Carl's Jr. So he is a very big fast food executive. And so, it's obvious from that why he would be against, minimum wage laws and against paying more people overtime. I mean, that just, so one thing to take in consideration is just as his job as chief executive of a giant fast food company, he's clearly going to be against minimum wage and against raise and against expanding overtime pay. But the thing is that, the way Democrats talk about this, they say, well, because he's against minimum wage raises and against overtime pay, that shows he's against workers and he's not for American workers. And how can you have this guy who's against workers and not for American workers be the labor secretary? Now, to me, that's just an incorrect inference. Just because Andy Puzder is for not raising the minimum wage, again, so he's anti-raising the minimum wage and anti-expanding overtime pay, that just because someone has those two positions doesn't mean they're anti-worker. I mean, Andy Puzder could think, and I believe Andy Puzder has said things like this. I thought I read something earlier where he said something like this. You could say, well, look, if we don't raise if we raise the minimum wage, then companies like fast food companies, like the ones he worked with, are just going to hire fewer people and automate more. So some people argue that if you raise the minimum wage, it's worse for American workers because there are going to be fewer jobs and more automation. Similarly, Andy Puzder could have said, somebody who is opposed to expanding overtime pay could say, look, I would love it if people got paid more. I'm not against that, but if you expand overtime pay, you're going to put a lot of businesses out of business, especially like small businesses, and that's going to be worse for workers. So just say somebody being anti-raising the minimum wage and anti-expanding overtime doesn't mean they're anti-worker. Now, there could be somebody who hates workers and is just pro-company and anti-worker and wants to just not raise the minimum wage because they personally just hate workers and wants to not expand overtime because they personally hate workers. But I have seen no evidence that that's Andy Puzder's view. All I know about Andy Puzder is, one, that he was the CEO he is the CEO of a fast food chain, so he's going to, regardless of what he thinks personally, he's going to support. He's probably going to say, I'm against the minimum wage and I'm against raising overtime pay. But that says nothing about what he'll do as labor secretary. I mean, I don't think every policy Rex Tillerson supported as the chief of chief of Exxon, he's going to support as Secretary of State. I mean, you're working for a company in one sense, you're going to push their interests. So just because Andy Puzder was anti-minimum wage, anti-overtime pay as a chief executive of a fast food company, that doesn't mean he's going to have all those kind of positions as labor secretary. But that aside, it's perfectly consistent for Andy Puzder to be anti-minimum wage raising and anti-overtime pay expansion and still be for the American worker. He just might feel, like a lot of respected people do, that if you raise the minimum wage, it's going to cost jobs and it's going to increase automation. And if you increase overtime pay, it's going to make it so companies can't hire as many people and cost workers jobs. So I find it... The number of Democrats that I've seen who made these kind of arguments against Andy Puzder, I see it as either disingenuous because they know better, or it's just dumb if they don't know better. I tend to think it's more of the former, in that they do know better, but they make these arguments for political gain or whatever. Anyways, so I was sort of annoyed when reading a bunch of the Democrat articles today going over the Democratic criticism of Andy Puzder. Okay, but anyways, I would like to know more about if any of you have any opinions about Andy Puzder withdrawing. Also, I'm kind of confused as to why it's not being covered more. You'd think this is sort of like a story that maybe makes President Trump look bad, or if you spin it a certain way. So why wouldn't the mainstream media be all over this story? It's like, maybe it's possible they're so fixated on this Russia non-story, because CNN's top story at 4 p.m. Eastern was this story about all these communications between Trump's campaign staff and Russian intelligence officers, yet no evidence whatsoever has been released saying that communication involved anything nefarious or anything having to do with like Russian interference in the election at all or anything. So but they're so excited about this Russia story, a lot of people who are against Trump, that they're so excited about it, maybe they're just not even paying attention to the news and don't realize, hey, this labor secretary withdrawing his nomination is a pretty big story. Like, I feel if the Russia thing wasn't out there, the General Flynn and the Russia thing were not there, the news would be going crazy today about the labor secretary withdrawing. They'd be like, oh, this is another sign that the Trump administration isn't being run correctly, and like, it's just disarray. And they'd be all up in arms about it, but they're not, because I think they're focused on the Russia thing. Anyways, just a personal opinion there. Hey, so what do you think about this? If you want to write in at all, I'd love to hear your comments or questions. You can either direct message me on Twitter at Lookner, at Lookner, or you can email me, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter if you want. And today, again, we're covering, just happened about an hour ago, Labor Secretary Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination. Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder withdrew his nomination for Labor Secretary. And also, I should point out, I'll read his tweet really quick. His tweet said, I am withdrawing my nomination for Secretary of Labor. I'm honored to have been considered, and I'm grateful to all who have supported me. So the tweet didn't explain anything, but there was also a statement he released. He released a statement, and this is the statement from Andy Puzder that was released. This was reported by Jennifer Jacobs of Bloomberg, tweeted this out. And Andy Puzder's statement was, after careful consideration and discussions with my family, I am withdrawing my nomination for Secretary of Labor. I am honored to have been considered by President Donald Trump to lead the Department of Labor and put America's workers and businesses back on a path to sustainable prosperity. I want to thank President Trump for his nomination. I also thank my family and my many supporters, employees, businesses, friends, and people who have voiced their praise and hopeful optimism for the policies and new thinking I would have brought to America as Secretary of Labor. While I won't be serving in the administration, I fully support the President and his highly qualified team. So that was the statement of Andy Puzder. Let me see if you all have any thoughts on this that you wanted to share today. If you don't, that's fine, but I like to hear when you have thoughts on this. Let's see. I'm checking my email account, steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Excuse me while I check this here. No thoughts yet. No comments yet. You might be making comments in the chat room, by the way, which is fine. But just so you know, I can't see the comments in the chat room. They go by too fast. So if you'd like for me to mention your comment or your question on this broadcast as we cover this breaking news, please either go to Twitter and direct message me at Lookner, at Lookner, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. So a couple other things that I found interesting about Andy Puzder that I didn't know, little fact things. I guess Andy Puzder was a big contributor to the Trump campaign and to the Republican campaign in November. I guess he gave, I saw a number that said $323,000 combined to both President Trump's campaign and Republican organizations. So there's that. And another thing I remember reading was that supposedly Democrats criticized Puzder because he said some workers from these fast food restaurants that he was the chief executive of complained that they were made to work with sick, or made to work when they're sick, or I don't know if it was extra hours, but they had work complaints. But then the article I was reading said, but actually the individual restaurants are run by franchise owners, franchisees, and not by the head office. So anyways, to repeat the breaking news we're covering, Andy Puzder, Labor Secretary nominee, pulled his nomination today. We don't know why. We were speculating before as to why. I think the one obvious possibility why is because he needed at least 50 Republican senators to vote for him, and they have a 52-48 majority. So if he loses 3 Republican senators, he cannot get nominated anymore. So maybe somehow word got out there that at least 3 Republican senators wouldn't vote for him. But I find, so the question is why wouldn't they vote for him? And so what information was there? And one possibility is that he had this, as I said before, he had an undocumented housekeeper, I believe it was, for a number of years, who was working for him, who he didn't pay taxes on, and he only paid taxes on her and let her go after he was nominated. So I don't know if it was the vetting process revealed that she was undocumented, or he just knew it, but he finally felt he had to fire her. But maybe there's something with all of that where he thought it was going to be embarrassing to him, or maybe he was intentionally not paying taxes on her, and if that came out, he was never going to actually get nominated. Maybe he didn't think people were going to find out about that. Maybe he forgot. There have been in the past, the Wall Street Journal helpfully pointed out that there have been in the past several nominees for different positions who ended up having nominee problems and didn't get nominated because of these issues with hiring some domestic help and not paying taxes on them and stuff, or hiring somebody and have them be undocumented. And then a couple of the people they talked about in this article were Kimba Wood, who was a nominee for Attorney General, and Bernard Kerik, who was nominated for something. So anyways, this is a problem that comes up once in a while where people have these people working for them and they're not paying taxes on them, or they're undocumented, and then it comes back to bite them if they get nominated for something. So that's a possibility, and there's also a possibility that what was that other thing I mentioned that he might worry about? There was the undocumented immigrant issue, and I am totally blanking right now. I said it about 10 minutes ago on this very broadcast. It's been kind of a busy day, so it wasn't. Maybe one of you can remind me what it was. There was another thing. Oh, the thing with his ex-wife, where his ex-wife, when they got divorced, appeared incognito on an Oprah episode and talked about the supposed abuse that he gave to her, that he was abusing her, and detailed some of it. And then after that episode, at some point, she recanted it. So perhaps there were issues with this he didn't want coming out. So, anyways, that's all we know at this point. He's withdrawn. No idea who is going to be nominated next. That's another thing on President Trump's plate. So there's this question. So I did read that Andy Puzder, was it's sort of rare that somebody gets nominated. Since Reagan administration, there hadn't been a nominee for Secretary of Labor who hadn't had public service experience. He's always been in the corporate world. So that was interesting. So will President Trump go with someone with a similar background, or maybe somebody who has more governmental experience? We'll see. It's just interesting because it's just another thing that President Trump has to deal with right now. So all right. So, now let's see. I want to see if people have. I see people. Okay. Well, we have Jane made a comment. Jane said he has already had his hearing. This was for the vote. Thank you, Jane. So, although Jane, I have a question now. So, so he had his hearing in front of the committee, but was there going to be discussion before the vote? So what Jane is saying, thank you, Jane, that Andy Puzder had his hearing with, I guess, the committee that ends up recommending him to the whole Senate for the vote. But were there going to be more so this? I know the Senate. I feel like we have seen this earlier, where either the committee or the Senate as a whole has a discussion on the nominee, even if he's not there or she's not there. And it's possible that if they were going to have this open discussion before the vote, Andy Puzder didn't want stuff coming out in that discussion, or maybe there were other details that hadn't been released yet that would have been released in that discussion. So a very good point, Jane. Thank you. But I'm not sure about the details of all that. But I appreciate. I like if you guys have corrections or you have new news stuff that you think I should know about. By all means, write me at Lookner at Twitter. Direct message me at LOOKNER, or email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. We have. Andrew S. has a comment. Andrew S. said, I personally do not follow fake stream news, mainstream media. Why don't you talk about Donald Trump's press briefing at the White House today with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Reply to the reporter about Donald Trump's supposed Islamophobia, racist tones question is great. Well, I do think that was a nice moment where basically there was a question today in the press conference involving President Trump and Israeli President Netanyahu, and somebody asked hey, should what do you have to say about these Donald, something like should Jews both in America and in Israel around the world, should they think that Donald Trump has their back given these charges that he's racist, or that his campaign has been racist or anti certain groups? And Benjamin Netanyahu basically just defended Donald Trump and said he's known him and his staff for a long time, and him and Jared Kushner and stuff, and said nobody's a bigger supporter of Donald Trump of Israel than Donald Trump is. So I think that's worth mentioning. Thank you, Andrew S. Just see if any other people have stuff they want to say about Andy Puzder here. So I have, let's see. Oh, this is from Pepident Pressy, and Pepident Pressy says, Puzder was a low-energy manlet, my friends say, but who can Trump put in his place that is good and that rhinos will want? Republicans in name only. So, well, at this point, that's I think it's not. It's. I don't know if it was rhinos so much. I mean, so maybe there were certain people, certain Republicans who just. So this is a good point that you raised, Pepident Prezi. It's a good point you raise, which is. Did perhaps Puzder find out that some Republicans weren't going to vote for him, not because of the housekeeper stuff and not because of the stuff with his wife, but because of like the minimum wage stuff, him being anti-minimum wage and him being like anti-President Obama's proposed expansion of overtime pay? Because as you point out, there are some Republican senators who are in districts that aren't like completely Republican, maybe mixed districts, and they're going to have a close race, and maybe they thought they couldn't support Puzder because he was anti-minimum wage and anti-overtime pay. That's a good point. Also, for all some of these, as you call them, Republicans in name only, but maybe some of these Republican senators who are in close districts, in close states where they're not guaranteed to win just because they're a Republican, maybe they thought, it'd be really great if I could go on record as opposing at least one Trump cabinet nominee. And maybe they see it as like, here's the one I can oppose. It's like one of the last. Are there any more? There's this one. Off the top of my head, I should know this, but I don't know if there are any more to be confirmed, but I do know it's one of the last ones, and they might say, you know what, this is one I can oppose, other people can oppose him anyway, and now I can go back to the part of my constituency that's not totally conservative and say to them, see, and that maybe leans liberal, and say, look what I did. I'm not just totally all in with President Trump and Republicans. I voted against Andy Puzder. So maybe there's some of that going on. Who knows? We don't know right now, and I haven't really heard any new information about this. So it's a very interesting question of why he did this. Also, this is an interesting point. This was done all of a sudden. There was no heads up about this. That's kind of odd, isn't it? And it was announced quickly. I didn't hear anything from the White House. I saw a couple tweets about it, and then Andy Puzder tweeted this out. And also I saw like a tweet saying the White House will not make a statement on this. I don't know if the White House, as of even right now, has made a statement on this. So you wonder, did this catch the White House off guard? Because normally, wouldn't you expect, if something like a cabinet nominee withdraws, which is a big deal, that the White House would have something to say about this? So is there a reason they're not talking about this? Were they caught off guard by it? Are they just too busy dealing with other stuff? I don't know. So interesting questions around this whole Andy Puzder withdrawal. We have, I'm just checking my email and seeing if there's any new messages here. Let's see. So there's a message from Drew here that says, why aren't you talking about the Russia submarine being 30 miles on the east coast, off the east coast of Connecticut, breaking the Cold War treaty? So just so people know, and somebody emailed earlier saying, why aren't you talking about the Netanyahu press conference? So we're not covering all the news on this show, so I'm not intentionally ignoring anything. This live stream is just dedicated to Andy Puzder withdrawing as Labor Secretary. So if I don't talk about something, don't think I'm intentionally ignoring it. If we were doing like a whole news show, then we'd cover everything, but just for this live stream, we put it up as breaking news Andy Puzder coverage. So I'm not ignoring the story about the submarine intentionally, and I'm not ignoring the story about whatever the press conference intentionally. It's just at this point where we had a couple dedicated live streams today, one about Trump's tweets and one about Andy Puzder withdrawing. And if you haven't seen the Trump's tweets one, did a whole show earlier today just devoted to Trump's tweets, talking about the tweets he sent out today, because I think his tweets are important and they don't get that much analysis. So if you're interested, it's called Trump Tweets Today, and you can watch it on Right Side Broadcasting's YouTube page. So again, we're just here covering this news, which strangely don't seem to be covering that much, which is important news that Labor Secretary Andy Puzder, about an hour and a half ago, withdrew his nomination for Labor Secretary. We don't have exact ideas. I don't have any information why. And also, we've had no official response from the White House. I was just going to check my Twitter and just see if anyone else said something about this, and it's kind of quiet. So I'm even looking at the people on Twitter I normally get news from and political correspondence and stuff, and they're not covering this at all. It's I don't know if people are just so wrapped up in this Russia thing. So it's very odd to me because isn't this a big story that the Labor Secretary nominee withdrew his nomination so late in the game? I don't know. So I'm just seeing if we have some more. Oh, so Joanne Goldsnyder writes in, how bad does this look for Trump? Yesterday Flynn, today this. Well, normally I'd say between, Joanne, I get your point, and it's an interesting point, and normally I'd say, yeah, for people who are anti-Trump, they could push this narrative that oh, his whole, he's losing people left and right. But the weird thing to me is no one seems to be really covering this Andy Puzder thing that much. I can't figure out why, and I'm looking, and maybe they'll start covering it tonight. But as I said before, at the 4 o'clock top of the hour Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, it was not even mentioned in the summary of what was to come. And I looked at MSNBC before, and they had, I think it was Steve Kornacki with a giant list of topics next to him, and none of the Labor Secretary thing wasn't in the list of topics. So, and I'm looking on my Twitter feed for different political correspondence, and I'm not seeing many people talk about it there. So I don't know how bad it looks for him if they're not really reporting it. Also, it's just, given, I think the General Flynn thing is, if it was General Flynn withdrew as a nominee and then Andy Puzder withdrew as a nominee the next day, I think two nominees withdrawing on consecutive days, people might be like, what's going on here? But I think people maybe separate the General Flynn thing as one thing, as someone who did something after after he was appointed National Security Advisor versus someone who was nominated and the nomination didn't go through. But a good question, Joanne. So thank you for that. I'm looking at email to see if there's any other email here. And again, if you want to comment, either direct message me on Twitter at @Lookner, at LOOKNER, or you can email me at steve.lookner@rsbn.tv. Would love to hear your comments if you have them, or questions. And thank you, Heart of Dixie, for sending that message out about my questions now. So we'll stay on a few more minutes here. I would like to think there'd be more news about this. Oh, the question I always ask, if you've watched me before, you know I always ask this. Will President Trump tweet about this? Will he tweet about Andy Puzder? By the way, last night, was it last night? What night was it? So 2 nights ago, when General Flynn resigned at night, I said on this show, my prediction was that President Trump would tweet about this. And some people said, no, he's not going to. But I was right, he did. Although I think I said he'd tweet about it before 4 a.m., but it was a little after that he tweeted about it. So, but he does tweet about stuff. So he had he had this big 6 tweets this morning. So will he be tweeting something about this? If he does tweet about it, you may see another episode of Trump Tweets Today. But so I'm interested in that. Will the White House say anything about this? What will they say about it? I don't know. We'll see. So I'm just checking to see before we sign off, I'm checking to see if there's any more news about this anywhere. It's so odd that it's people are silent about this seemingly big story. I'm looking up Twitter again. I'm seeing Andy Puzder's tweet. I'm seeing somebody, Matt Visser from the Boston Globe says, Andy Puzder is the 12th cabinet nominee in history to have the nomination withdrawn, first since Tom Daschle in 2009. So I can tell you that. Oh, Elizabeth Warren says, Andy Puzder's withdrawal is good news for hardworking Americans across the country. I'm really surprised about that. So I see some speculation on why he withdrew, but no one really knows at this point why he withdrew. Anyway, so not much in the way of news right now as to what is going on. Anyways, but I want to just repeat again, just because Andy Puzder was against minimum wage and against overtime expansion pay doesn't mean he's anti-worker. One, because he was the head of a CEO of a fast food company. So what do you expect his positions to be? Second of all, it is perfectly consistent for someone to say, I'm pro-worker, but I'm also anti-minimum wage and anti-expansion of overtime pay, because those things, if they're passed, if you raise the minimum wage and you raise overtime pay, companies are going to hire fewer workers, and they'll automate more, and it'll be worse for workers. That's something somebody could say. So that's all I know at this point about this story. I would think there's going to be something more coming out. I will repeat again, on a slower news day, this would be a gigantic story. So don't judge the importance of the story by how much the mainstream media covers it. They're still worried about this story that came out last night about the Trump campaign people talking to Russian intelligence people during the campaign, and they're obsessed with this story like it's like uncovering some grand conspiracy to help Russia and hurt America, even though there's no evidence that they actually talked about anything like that. And they didn't no evidence of them talking about anything nefarious or anything. But the mainstream media seems to want to cover that to death. Anyways, so I'm just doing a last check to see if there are any more comments. I don't want to miss any of them here. Let's go. Am I even signed in? Did I accidentally sign out? Sorry everyone. I just need a second to sign back into Twitter. Let's see here. I am back in. So now we have, we have a comment from Miss Teresa. Miss Teresa says, hi, quick break to watch you. Note two things. Number one, you probably know, but McCain and two Republicans said they would vote no for Puzder, so not enough votes. So I didn't hear that three said they definitely vote no. I heard some people said they were leaning no, but they weren't committed yet to voting no. And but maybe I heard wrong information, but that's at least as far as I knew. Two, Reince Priebus had pushed Puzder, I think, so might not have been a deal breaker for Trump. If one is to believe Alex Jones, who think Priebus is part of the saboteur contingent. That's what Miss Teresa said. So Miss Teresa, and have you heard any replacement names? I have not yet, Miss Teresa. So, but I'm not sure. I'm looking up McCain opposed Puzder, because I did not hear that three senators were definitely going to oppose later. So the LA Times came out with an article today where they said at least four Republican senators would oppose. So CNN reported that at least four would oppose, but that was this morning. But again, I did not hear anything where like three senators came out and like said themselves, I will definitely oppose this nominee. I will never ever vote for this person. So I hadn't heard that yet. So, but maybe these reports did come out, and it's certainly possible that the Trump administration got wind of this and they were just like, hey, Andy Puzder, we heard about this. Sorry about that. So who knows what happened? Okay, any more last emails people want to get in? Let's see real quick. I always lose the email thing. Okay, so basically that's what we know. Just wanted to come on today, wanted to cover this breaking news for you. Again, sorry we're not at the set today. There's some stuff going on, some fixes. We're doing some little fix stuff with the office and the set today. So I couldn't get in the set, so we're doing it from right here in my living room. So normally we would be on the set for this, but wanted to come on, like to give you breaking news, like to give you an alternative to the mainstream media even when they're covering the breaking news, but I gotta say I saw basically no coverage happening of this thing, which I thought was very odd. So if there's more breaking news, we'll come on and we will report it to you, but I hope you enjoyed this breaking coverage of Andy Puzder's withdrawing as the Labor Secretary nominee. We'll see if maybe later today President Trump comes out or the Trump administration says something about a possible replacement. I don't know. We'll have to see. Lots going on, lots of news. And whatever happened, what's going on with the executive order travel ban? What happened with that? Wasn't something supposed to happen with that? Remember the travel ban executive order? My gosh, so much happening. So I don't know what's happening with that. Weren't they working on a new one? Just so much going on here. And I got another message. So before I sign off, I'll just check my messages real quick. And Miss Teresa was just correcting typos, but they were fine. I could read your message, Miss Teresa. So, anyways, there's plenty more news to come. I think this is probably the greatest news to day ratio of any first few weeks of a president, which is fine with me. But be confident that we here at Right Side will always keep you updated on the news. If you want to know when we're coming on with breaking news, or at least when I'm coming on with breaking news, follow me at Twitter at Lookner at LOOKNER, and I will give you a shout whenever we're coming on with me covering breaking news. And hope you've had a good day today. Hope you've been enjoying yourselves wherever you are. And I will talk to you guys, who knows, maybe later tonight, maybe tomorrow. It could be at any time. So have a great day. Moderators, thank you so much for moderating, as you always do. Do a great job moderating. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And have a great day or great evening, whether you are. And we will talk to you soon. This has been Right Side Broadcasting breaking news coverage. And we'll see you later on. Have a good one.